Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Real Estate Exam Prep, where I break down the real estate exam and the content so that way you can pass on the first try. So today's lecture is going to be on fair housing. Now, this is going to be a multi-video session. So the first session we're going to get into here is going to be the national laws pertaining to fair housing, and we're going to get into the prohibited practices of the fair housing law. So first, well, as we discuss fair housing, some of the content and material we're going to get into might be a little uncomfortable, but we have to go through it. The reason why there's laws in place is because there were people that were breaking the law. And unfortunately, it still kind of goes on today, but we have to do our best to kind of monitor each other and make sure that that doesn't happen anymore. But this is going to be a heavy topic on the exam. About a third of the exam on both the national and the state is going to be based on fair housing laws. So you definitely need to make sure that you're well versed in it, okay? So let's begin. So the purpose of the civil rights law that affect the real estate industry is to create a marketplace in which all persons of similar financial means have similar range of housing choices. The goal is to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to live where he or she chooses. So in this topic, dates are going to be very important. Now, the first date that you want to memorize is 1866. This was the first fair housing law. This is the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And under this act, it states that all citizens of the United States shall have the same right in every state and territory as is enjoyed by white citizens thereof to inherit, purchase, lease, sell, hold, and convey real and personal property. So this was the law the first law that ever took place that prevented discrimination on the basis of race. So you cannot discriminate on the basis of race as of 1866 pertaining to fair housing. Now, from 1866, the next time we see any kind of change is not until 1962. And this was Executive Order 11063. And this was signed by John F. Kennedy. And what this did here was it prevented racial discrimination pertaining to federal housing as far as availability of housing or utilizing federal funds for housing. They couldn't discriminate on the basis of race. Now, the next major change that actually happens is in 1968. Now, be mindful of the dates. 1866, 1968. So over 100 years go by before we even consider making some major, advancements to the fair housing law. So in 1868, what was happening here, there was a Supreme Court case of Jones versus Mayer. The Supreme Court upheld that the 1866 law, as far as discrimination on the basis of race, is illegal, whether it's public or private. So what was happening here, it was private discrimination. Person was selling a property. They did not want to sell to an African American. It was a private deal, but they were sued, and the plaintiff won, stating that you cannot do that. It was an illegal practice, even though it wasn't publicly being sold and advertised. You were doing it privately. You can't discriminate on the basis of race. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, you're right, can't do that, and they sided with them. Now, at this point, we also come up with the protected categories. So in addition to race, we now have other categories that will protect other individuals pertaining to fair housing. And here are the other categories. So now in 1968, it is illegal to discriminate against race, color, religion, national origin in pertaining to housing. So the next change we see for the Fair Housing Act is in 1974, that we now add sex as a protected category. So during this era, what was happening is there was discrimination against, single women, or if women were divorced and so forth. So, there was discrimination there. So it made it illegal to discriminate on the basis of sex pertaining to housing. In 1988, then we added handicap and we added familial status. So we'll go deeper into those in just a second, but there has been another change in 2021. So in 2021, the federal government has now added gender identity and sexual orientation under the category as sex. So you can no longer now discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity, which is huge. And surprisingly, it's been kept quiet. No one is aware of it, but this is on a federal level now. Okay, so those individuals are now protected under sex under the Fair Housing Act. So for handicap and disabled status, It is defined as a person with a disability to include any individual with a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, such as speech, vision, hearing, mobility, cancer, HIV, alcoholism, heart disease, diabetes, epilepsy, autism, and drug addiction. So this is all now covered under handicap status under the Fair Housing Law. So now it makes it illegal for a landlord to either evict or discriminate housing based on any of that, or even a home seller if you're selling a property and you're discriminating on those bases. So under familial status, what they're talking about here is discrimination on the basis of family, really more so as far as children, right? Where a landlord may discriminate because they don't want children, in the building or what have you. So the protection here are going to be any family that have minors, that have children, any expecting parents. They're protected under fair housing. A landlord can't evict you because you're expecting, even though the child's not here yet. You're protected under that. Also, if you're seeking legal custody of a child, right, that you're protected under familial status as well. So a landlord could not evict you under those grounds. Now, there are some exemptions, and the exemption will be more for elderly or senior housing, where you have to be of a certain age in order to reside in these communities, and that's a legal exemption. And we'll actually get into more exemptions on the next video. So let's talk about prohibited practices now of the Fair Housing Law and the sale or rental of housing. It is illegal discrimination to take any of the following actions because of race, color, religion, sex, including gender identity and sexual orientation, disability, familial status, or national origin in the following. Number 1, refusal to sell, rent to, negotiate, or deal with any person seeking housing and or deny access to or a membership in any multiple listing service or real estate broker or organization. Remember, as an agent, you're a public servant. Your duties are to work with anyone who seeks your services. So number 2, discrimination in terms, conditions, or privileges for the sale or rental of housing. So number 3, advertising housing that indicates any preference, limitation, or discrimination. And this happens more often than people believe. We actually had something in 2005 here in Worcester where a broker actually lost her license because she was practicing discriminatory practices where the owner didn't want certain races and ethnicities in their building, and she made sure that that was the case. So you don't want to do that. Number 4, falsifying availability of housing for inspection, sale, or rent, or otherwise making housing unavailable. Housing's available to everyone. It's not selective. Number 5, provide a person different housing services or facilities. Everyone needs to be treated equal. You can't offer certain things for other individuals than other people. Everyone gets the same treatment, the same services. It's all uniform. Number 6, impose different sales prices or rental charges for the sale or renting of a dwelling. Cannot do that. Number 7, use different qualification criteria or applications or sale or rental standards or procedures such as income standards, application requirements, application fees, credit analysis, sale or rental approval procedures, or other requirements. Whatever your process is, if you're renting and you have a criteria, that criteria needs to be uniform across the board. You can't pick and choose who do you want to have, a better credit score or whatever it is. It's whatever that criteria is, it's standard, and you cannot change. You cannot deviate from that standard. So number 8, evict a tenant or a guest and or harass a person. Here, you're just evicting or removing that person because they fall under the protected category. They didn't violate the lease in any way. That's an illegal procedure, legal practice. You can't do that. Number 9, fail or delay performance of maintenance or repairs and or limit privileges, services, or facilities of a dwelling. You can't pick and choose who you're going to do your work for. If you're a landlord or whatever, you can't say, I'm going to work with these people first and these other folks can wait. You can't discriminate in those regards. So number 10, discourage the purchase or rental of a dwelling. And we've had cases where, either agents may have certain feelings about people that they're working with and they don't want to see them in a certain area. We'll get into that. Or landlords where, they have a unit available and all of a sudden it's not available, or if somebody's coming in, they're saying, well, maybe you don't want to live here because it's noisy, and coming up with excuses. That's an illegal practice. You cannot do that. Assign a person to a particular building or neighborhood or section of a building or neighborhood. So this is also referred to as steering. Now, you're going to see steering on the exam left and right, okay? Now, sometimes steering can be done inadvertently, because everyone has a natural bias of something. So, and sometimes it's done, like I mentioned, inadvertently, where somebody may say, hey, listen, I want you to show me properties, but I want to be in a good neighborhood. So can you show me good neighborhoods, right? Number one, legally, you can't do that because your license law prevents you from doing that, because then you're going to be steering, right? What I may consider to be a good neighborhood, you may not consider to be a good neighborhood, and vice versa. So we can never direct people to neighborhoods which we feel are better than other areas. Only the client, only the buyer can tell us where they want to live, and then we can show them properties, right? But, certain neighborhoods have a certain feel or demographic to it. And the best example I'll use will be like Chinatown, right? So it's actually a district in Boston. If you're working with an Asian family, you can't say, oh, well, since you're Asian, you must want to live in Chinatown. That's steering, that's discrimination at its finest, right? You can't do that. Now, if the family says this is where I want to live, then at that point, yes, that makes sense. They are directing you. You cannot direct them, okay? Now, the other flip side to steering is, you have agents that may be, have certain feelings of people of different ethnicity. And if they happen to live in a certain neighborhood that you're looking to move into, they may try to steer you out of that neighborhood because they just don't want to deal with people that look like you. I know it sounds awful, but it's the reality of it, right? Just like employees, wherever you work, you have good employees and you have bad ones. Well, as agents, we have good agents and we have bad agents too. But it's up to us to, notify people of the bad agents so we can get them out. So that's steering. Now, you're going to see that on the exam, so make sure you have a good understanding of it. The next one is blockbusting. So blockbusting is for profit, persuade or try to persuade homeowners to sell their homes by suggesting that people of a particular protected characteristics are about to move into their neighborhood. And that happens, then the property value goes down, right? So I'm going to pick on my people because that's easier if I do it, if I pick on me. So that's like me going to a neighbor and say, hey, listen, Puerto Ricans are moving in. You know what's going to happen once they're in here, right? Property value is going to go down. All this is going to happen. So if I was you, I would sell your property now before that happens. Because if it does, you're not going to make the money that you can make. So you should sell it now. That is blockbusting. That is an illegal practice. Okay. Now you're going to see this on the exam. You're going to see it both on the federal, on the national, and you're going to see it on the state. So make sure you have a good understanding of it, because I promise you're going to see at least more than one question based on steering and blockbusting. Number 13, refusal to provide or discriminate in the terms or conditions of homeowners insurance because of the race, color, religion, sex, including gender identity or sexual orientation, disability, familial status, or national origin of the owner and or occupant of the dwelling. And then the last one we're going to go over, number 14, is redlining. And this is making different terms or conditions for home loans by lenders. Now, the reason why this was called redlining is because back in the day, right, lenders would have a map of an area. And they would take their red ballpoint pen and they would redline, they would outline a certain neighborhood. Now, typically that neighborhood would be a neighborhood that, as far as socioeconomic level was low, right? Was predominantly a lot of minorities in these neighborhoods. So the bank will look at that and say, well, if anyone is looking to buy in these neighborhoods, it's a risk, right? Because if we have to foreclose on them, if they default on their loan, we're not going to be able to sell that property because who else is going to want to move into that neighborhood? Maybe another minority, but the banks didn't want to deal with that, right? So they would redline an area and they would change the financial terms. So if you're buying in that neighborhood, they would charge you a higher interest rate, require more of a down payment. They would change the terms. If you were buying somewhere else, you would have better terms. But the problem is the property prices were different. So other people couldn't afford these other areas. They knew that and they took advantage of it. So that's redlining. Now, also under the Fair Housing Act, it makes it illegal to harass persons because of race, color, religion, sex, including gender identity and sexual orientation, disability, familial status, or national origin, among other things this forbids sexual harassment. So that's protected as well. It is also illegal to coerce, intimidate, threaten, interfere with a person buying, renting, or selling housing, complaining of discrimination, or exercising his rights as set forth by the law. So somebody files a complaint, you can't intimidate them, you can't go after them. You have to let it go through and so forth. If not, you're going to be found at fault for other things. So there you have it, folks. So that is the national portion of the fair housing laws. The next video, we're going to get into exemptions. You do have some exemptions as a homeowner. If you are selling a property yourself, or if you are renting the property yourself, you will have some flexibility as far as discrimination, right? But you can never discriminate on the basis of race. So that'll be the next video. And then the following video after that will be more of the fair housing laws pertain specifically to Massachusetts. All right, folks. Well, listen, if you have any questions, any comments, please leave them below. And I hope to see you in class next time.